Welcome to the Not Just a Pony Ride podcast, presented to you by Hetra University. If you've landed here, you're probably passionate about how horses help people. Whether you're an instructor, therapist, in the business, or have experienced equine assisted services yourself, we're glad you're here. Join us as we talk about the benefits, the science, to-dos, how-tos, and all of the reasons why what we do is so much more than just a pony ride. And now, from the Hetra campus in Gretna, Nebraska, here's your host, occupational therapist Katie King.
Hey friends, welcome back for another episode. Before we kick things off today, I wanted to remind you guys about the Q&A giveaway that we're doing over on the Not Just a Pony Ride Facebook page. So go over there and ask your questions in the comments. Use the link that I have there on the Facebook page, and you might be able to win a Not Just a Pony Ride t-shirt if you shout out your questions. We've gotten some really good ones so far, so I'm excited for the next episode of Q&A. I'm not gonna leak what the topic is yet, but I'm always looking for more ideas from our audience on what you want to hear. Anyway, so today we have Kalynn Sortino, and she is going to talk to us about networking. Networking is so important for every business, not just nonprofits. Kalynn is our development manager, so this is like her bread and butter. She loves it, she's passionate about it, and she is going to share some awesome tips and tricks with us today to help make it a little less scary. Because to me, networking seems like public speaking, but much more intimate, which can be not so fun for some of us. So she's going to explain why it's so important, how we can get our names out in our community, and really showing that community support for not just donor cultivation, but also getting volunteers and cultivating more participants for our programs. And networking does so much for so many areas of our organization. So Kalynn's here to tell us how to do it. Enjoy. Welcome to the show, Kalynn.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to have a good conversation today about networking, which I know next to nothing about, and it seems scary.
Oh, it's not scary.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you today about it to make that process less scary for me and our audience. But first, why don't you tell us about you and a little bit about your background and how you became so good at this?
Sure. Thank you. That was very kind. So my name is Kalynn Sortino. So I'm the development manager here at Hetra. I moved here back in March. So I was in Sioux City, Iowa for the last 10 years. I got my bachelor's degree at Briarcliff University in business development and marketing, and got my master's degree in leadership management. And the whole time I was there, all of my internships and jobs was all kind of in business development and for nonprofits. So I kind of fell into it and started that by the connections actually that I was making throughout Sioux City was how I got my first internship there. And then had the background to just keep interacting with everyone and making new friendships. And that just built my, I guess, professional development to where I am today.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your job as the development manager here. So what are you in charge of here at Hetra?
Yes. So I'm in charge of donor cultivation and retention, as well as fundraising. And those are probably my two biggest roles, but then also just educating our community about who Hetra is and what we do and the benefits that we see here.
So in your previous jobs, are those similar job characteristics you had previously, or is some of that new since you've come to Hetra?
All basically the same. So I started out with business development. So I was bringing businesses into downtown Sioux City.
Okay.
And that was my first quote unquote big kid role. But a lot of that was networking and going out to businesses and kind of seeing what the community wanted to see for downtown and what businesses were interested in joining. And then I had a couple internships in college that were at a rehab facility center, but I was doing marketing and development. And so then that just kind of all morphed, I guess, as I continued to grow. And my last job was in resource development. And so I was in charge of the marketing, the grants, the fundraising, anything and everything. So when I found Hetra, it kind of was a perfect little fit of everything that I enjoyed and wanted to do And so I'm very thankful that it worked out.
Yeah. Sound like your resume was stacked for what we needed here at Hetra. That's perfect. Well, I'm excited to talk with you more today about kind of the details of your job, but more specifically about networking, because I feel like networking is a huge part for nonprofits in general, no matter what nonprofit you have, but especially for us here at Hetra. So why don't you kind of just introduce to us, what is networking? Like someone says, everyone hears that. You need to go out and network yourself or network your business, but what does that even mean?
So networking can mean a variety of things, but overall, the umbrella of networking is to just build your professional and social database, right? So meeting different individuals, educating each other on what you do. It is a very scary topic for a lot of people, so that's okay. I love talking with people, and I think that is the one thing that every job that I have, I want to be able to connect with others, more so that I can learn and grow, and then they can learn and grow, right? So there's tons of ways, I guess, you can network. You can go to events and network. You can go to coffee hours. You can have a one-on-one, and that is still considered networking because you're still learning and growing. But yeah, I understand that it's scary.
It's like public speaking, but different.
Yeah.
And sometimes people say, go to this networking event. Like, say there's some kind of event in your community where you go and you network with people. And you show up to your networking event, and you get your cup of coffee or whatever, and then you stand there and you're like, now what? You just have to talk to people.
Yeah.
But how do you do that gracefully without just shoving business cards in people's hands and, that kind of thing? That part the transition can be a little difficult, I think.
Yeah. So for me, like right now, it's very easy to network because I'm new. And everyone loves that new face at a networking event. A lot of the times, like let's take a coffee hour, for example. So those are open most of the time to the public. Anyone can show up, any business, any organization. And when someone notices that someone new is there, it is very easy for them to be like, I've never seen you before. Like, what is your name? What do you do? And for those, it's smart to practice your elevator pitch, right? But not like a sales pitch. It's your elevator speech. Like, who are you? What is your title? And what is your organization? And that's the biggest thing that I focus on, because that's when a conversation can start. Because a lot of the times, if someone has heard about Hetra, but they don't know what Hetra does, that's a perfect chance for me to chime in and be like, well, here is what we do. Here is who we serve. Here is how you can get involved. But I would never start with, here's how you can get involved. Like, come and join us.
Right.
Yeah. You should never sell yourself or make a sell like right at the beginning. So you want to introduce yourself and then ask them who they are and where they work. The biggest thing that I tell anyone new to networking, and I would tell college kids this, and when I would go and give speeches at colleges, if you're scared to go to a networking event with 3 or 5 business cards. So, and you can't leave that networking event until your 3 or 5 business cards are gone with 3 or 5 new business cards. Okay. So that means that you met 3 people and you might not remember everything that they do. And you might not have talked about anything that they do. Like you could have been talking about a sport or the weather even. Like that's an easy topic for people to be like, oh, it's so hot today.
Especially in Nebraska.
Yes. But that is an easy way to get started, I guess. And that's a rule of thumb that it'll get you out of your comfort zone, even if it's for like 15 minutes. But for 15 minutes, you met 5 different people and they have your name. They'll probably remember you the next time.
And I like that tip to be reciprocating. So not only are you getting rid of those 3 business cards, but making sure that you get 3 business cards, right? So being able to have that back and forth with people helps build the rapport and build the memory, I guess, of you.
Being consistent with it. That is something that you'll go to a coffee hour and maybe you were super nervous and you don't want to ever go back. Well, then is someone going to remember you from that one event that you went to that one time? So being a little consistent with it. And it's just building your confidence, right? Every day. So
do you have some suggestions for how to find these types of events? I mean, I know we partner with lots of community. We're fortunate to have a lot of community groups like our county and the city that we're in. What's some tips you have for people in finding some of those events?
Yeah, so if you're new to a community, looking up different chambers and chamber events is probably the first thing I would suggest for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So a new organization looking to get involved, maybe you're you moved and you're new to the area. Finding chamber events is the best way to get connected because they have everything from morning coffees to after hours to networking groups, and those are individual meetings. That would be the first step because that's where you're going to learn everything that's going on in your community. The second one would be if you are meeting someone new and then scheduling a one-on-one. Mm-hmm. So those are all good events. So you're going to those chamber events, you're going to those initial coffee hours, and then meeting someone and you decide that you're going to meet one person that you want to have an extended conversation with, and then inviting them outside of that to go somewhere. But your city and your community and those chambers and organizations are probably the best way to get involved.
So I know there's a lot of folks listening that might be in rural communities. Mm-hmm. I think that what we do, especially with the horses, lends itself really well to being in those smaller towns and those smaller communities and rural areas of the world. Do you have any suggestions for people that might be a little bit more limited as far as their community size?
Yeah, I think if you were in a smaller community and they maybe don't have a chamber because the chamber is in a bigger city that is further away, you could still make a coffee hour or set something up for your community in itself. But traveling is also going to be helpful. There's a lot of webinars that are especially since COVID, a lot of networking things came virtually, which I think is also a good way to get out. People might say that's a little harder to connect, right? Because you don't know when to talk when you're on a screen.
That always is awkward.
Yes, but we've kind of become more flexible with networking these days. And so if you're smaller, see what surrounding areas are doing. Maybe connecting with your city or your rep, like your mayor or anything like that, city councilman, and seeing what they would suggest or who you should get involved with, or just reaching out to other organizations that are like yours. So networking with another nonprofit and reaching out to them and saying, hey, I would love to get together and pick your brain about XYZ.
Are most of the networking events that you go to primarily all nonprofits, or is it a mixture of businesses?
It is a mixture of businesses. I am a part of one group that does solely nonprofits, which is great. And you can pick your brain. The biggest part is we are very fortunate at Hetra because we are a larger nonprofit. And so we have the staff flexibility for me to go out to networking events. But most of the time, those are businesses. Very rarely do I run into multiple nonprofits at a networking event, which is great for me because then if someone goes back to their business or their boss and they're looking to support an organization or do something, hopefully I am on the forefront of their mind because I will be the one out there. But nonprofits, I think the biggest hurdle is having that time to go out and market yourself. You can market all day long on social media, but you need to be out in front of those businesses and those business owners.
And I think that's somewhere that we are blessed at Hetra to have you and we have a whole development team, that specializes in being able to help and get us out in the world. And some centers aren't fortunate enough to have that. And there's, 3 or 4 people doing every job in their organization. Do you have any tips for people that, don't have a development manager and still need to get out there and make the time to do it? I mean, what's the most or the minimum amount of time that we should be thinking about networking?
I think first, because I've been a part of those nonprofits that were smaller that only had 3 to 5 staff and you don't have the flexibility to go out once a week or twice a week. But it's a huge benefit to go out. And so being able to budget that networking for the year or in making sure it needs to be in your budget some way, somehow. Because we call it donor cultivation here at Hetra, and that the return on that is great when you go out into the community. So smaller nonprofits and smaller centers, I still think you should try to go out at least once a month. Like there are monthly things and events happening every day of the week, every time, and finding that one in your schedule that works for you and being consistent with it. So if you can only go to a networking function that is from anywhere from like 7:30 to 10 in the morning, you find that one and you are going to try to make it your mission to go out there each month. Because the more you're out there, the easier it becomes to network and to talk to individuals. But then it's also to build those connections for later on down the road.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I like that you brought up budgeting. I mean, how do you suggest that people budget for that? Because it can look different all the time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it might even include, for some of our friends in rural communities, I mean, your travel to get there, or if you're doing one-on-ones,
purchasing the coffee or a lunch.
Mm-hmm.
It looks differently. So whether or not you're budgeting to be a chamber member or to be a member of an organization, for us, we're very fortunate. We're a part of some chambers as well as some individual networking groups. So we call them TIPS groups here in Omaha. And those are one person from every industry can be there. And that is where you talk about what's happening in your organization. That's where you can bounce off ideas. And that looks different price point wise. Some are free, which are great. Some cost like an annual fund of some kind. But I would say even if you could budget, you don't have to budget a lot for networking. I would say even if it was $25 a month, and that $25 is either going to get you a coffee or that's going to take you out. Like there's a ticket to a speed networking. I did one of those for the first time last week. And it was like speed dating, but it was fun because it was a women's only one.
Interesting.
And so you got to like go around and talk to all these people, and they gave you a specific time, right? And that's all you had to talk about. But then if you wanted to extend that conversation with someone, you exchanged business cards and then scheduled a later date.
Then at the end, did you get matched with other organizations?
No.
They also chose you.
Yeah. I think the return on that in the end and like what you will see is also relatively quick for us. So,
and that comes back in all areas, right? I mean, volunteer opportunities.
Yes. It's not just donors.
Right. It's everything. And I mean, participant cultivation, all kinds of things. When you share your story, you never know who it's going to touch in what way.
Yes.
This episode of the Not Just a Pony Ride podcast is sponsored in part by
Equiforce. Equiforce is a database that allows you to track every facet of your organization, from horse, donor, and volunteer management to scheduling, grant tracking, incident reports, and tracking participant progress too. This is not a one-size-fits-all setup. Instead, Equiforce personally works with you to learn how your facility functions and takes note of your specific terminology so that they can create a unique system to match the needs of your organization. And of course, Equiforce provides an ongoing training and support so that your database can grow with you. Visit them at www.equiforce.com. That's EQUI-FORCE.com.
This episode is also sponsored in part by
Wooden Horse Corporation and the Equicizer. The Equicizer is a handcrafted, non-motorized mechanical horse used by equine-assisted service programs worldwide. The Equicizer requires no electricity, tools, or maintenance and can be used indoors or out for evaluations, warm-ups, stretching, mounting, dismounting practice, and volunteer training, fear, and build confidence with students, clients, and volunteers. It can easily carry the weight of 2 adults, offering the unique option to ride tandemly. To learn more about the Equicizer, visit equicizer.com. That's EQUICIZER.com. When you share our story for Hetra, I just listened to an interesting podcast from the Nonprofit Hub that was talking about brochure speak and like how things can start to sound very rehearsed or rote or, like it can't, like you read it off the website. How do you keep your spiel and our mission authentic to you? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It depends on where I am and who I'm talking to.
Mm-hmm.
So if I am talking to a VA group, I'm not going to talk about I'll talk about our participants, but I'm going to talk about our veterans and like how we benefit them or how they can get involved. If I am like the one this morning, she was asking questions about different events going on and what are our major events.
Mm-hmm.
And so really reading the room about where you are. And I mean, I say the same line, like my name is Kalynn Sortino. I'm the development manager for Heartland Equine Therapeutic Riding Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And then you balance it off of if they're horse lovers,
Mm-hmm.
if they are wanting to be involved with kids with special needs or adults in rehab or things like that.
Finding out their interests.
Yes.
And then kind of
catering it to them.
Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes, like for you, that comes so very naturally. And for a lot of people who are in kind of your role,
Mm-hmm.
but I could see that being maybe something people are thinking about if it's not their primary role and they have to go out and do this, what's the best way to pitch that authentically. And I think that's a big part of making connections with people.
Yeah, I agree. And it's never going to be that first time, right? So a lot of those tailoring a speech to someone specific, I had probably already met at a different event. And then I saw them again and like, oh yeah, they're big into volunteering.
What's your opinion on hosting your own networking event? Because I think that could be something for us to think about. There's a lot of people that do like open houses to come see what we do. I know we just did one not that long ago, but that was in conjunction with another, kind of group that's in our area. But what about hosting your own networking event?
I think it's a wonderful thing to do, especially for us and nonprofits in general. A lot of businesses and business owners probably have never seen our facility or have heard of it, but never been out there and always wanted to. And hosting your own event is the perfect way for them to come and see what it's all about, like firsthand. And especially with if donors that you already have or donors and businesses that you're wanting to connect with, that's an easy sell for us and in any industry for a nonprofit of being comfortable in our own home, right? So they'll come out and that's your safe space. So you're not feeling uncomfortable or awkward or nervous at a different location trying to sell what we do. Because the moment that it's a different experience, right?
Yeah.
Like the moment you come into Hetra and come down to our campus, the feeling is just different and exciting and magical. And that's what we heard a lot when we did host ours is that they didn't realize how big our facility was or they didn't realize how many horses we had or just how many people we see in a week. And it's fun and it's exciting to bring them here.
Absolutely.
And so I would suggest that for anyone.
So how do you keep cost low when considering hosting your own event? I know that's something we always want to do other than you're going to have the staff time into it.
Yep.
But keeping costs low while also hosting a nice event.
Partnerships. So with networking, builds partnerships and relationships. Finding those other organizations that you maybe work with or have in the past and saying, hey, we're going to host, I'm going to use the coffee hour as an example, going to a coffee company and being like, we would love for you to provide the coffee. Your marketing would be out there because we would say it's provided by so-and-so. You would be able to be there to also talk about your business. And it's not, if you're hosting an event, it's about you, but it's also about those that are there because you're not just talking about Hetra. You're talking about the business that came from downtown that has never been out to Gretna and things like that. And so building those connections and partnering with them, asking if there's a way to even do it at a discounted rate because you're a nonprofit or because you're hosting this event. It's can be challenging at times, but it's never hurts to ask, right? My biggest thing with anything in life is the worst thing they're going to say is no.
Right.
So but you're not going to know that answer until you ask.
That's right. We just got to get comfortable with that. Putting ourselves out there so that we can reap the ultimate rewards, which is just meeting people and sharing your mission, and hopefully people will, partake in your mission with you.
Yeah.
Do you have any other kinds of networking tips and tricks for us that we haven't discussed already?
Ooh. I would say the biggest thing for networking and building those connections is that's building your brand awareness, right? And so you might be paying a marketing person on your staff, but going out there and being there in person really puts a face to the name. And that resides with a lot of people more than just getting your annual mailer or seeing your poster around town. They see that there's that person who's dedicated to their community as well as their business. So I like going out because I like sharing our mission and sharing what we do. And people that I meet, not everyone, but people that I meet might only know one part of our organization. And being able to go out there and say, well, we also help veterans, or we also host free coffee hours for them. We partner with other organizations in our community to come out to Hetra, or we bring our minis to them. It's the best form of marketing, I think, is going out there in the community.
And I think through COVID, we've talked a little bit about how it's helped us some, right? But I also think it's hurt us in a lot of ways, but hurt us in the way that we've all started to be a little bit more digital, and social media is fantastic. It spreads the word like wildfire, but you're right, putting that face to the name and really getting to see firsthand the commitment to that, not just, scrolling through social media and seeing, those posts.
Yep. It's easy to share the story. And I think if you're new to networking or you're nervous to go out for the first time, it's always helpful maybe to invite someone to go with you. Yeah. So someone that you know. So at least when you're in a room of strangers, you know one person. So then hopefully when you leave that room of strangers, you met 3 people. And so then it's not as scary. But once you get started, the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll become, the less daunting it will be.
The easier the elevator pitch gets.
Yeah. I still get nervous sometimes, but that's now at conferences when there's like 1 million people.
So when you meet all these people, what is the best way that you have found to like keep them organized? I mean, so you come home with all these business cards, or, whatever, you met so-and-so from this place, and, maybe they call you later and you're like, oh my gosh, I know I met you somewhere, but what was it? How do you keep yourself organized with all these connections?
Yeah. So after I come back from a networking event with business cards, I instantly send them a thank you. Like, it was wonderful meeting you this morning. Best of luck with whatever we talked about, or I hope you can come out and see Hetra sometime.
Just a quick email.
Just a quick little second touch, right? So that your first touch was you met them. Your second touch is the response to, and that will help me remember, like, I'll hopefully remember your name more if I then had that conversation. And then use it again. Sometimes I try to do it the same day, if not the very next day. So it's not like a week later, like, hey, it was nice meeting you last week. But that happens sometimes too, and that's not a bad thing. But I also have a binder for business cards. And sometimes I've seen people do this at networking events, is they'll take the business card and then write something on it to help them remember who you were. So it was like, for mine, they would write, like, Hetra has the horse on it. Like, we have, our business cards are really nice. They have our mission and things. But they'll write something specific that we talked about, or something like also does veterans, or like volunteers 200 shifts. Like, they'll write something on it. And I think that's really helpful, especially if you're a visual person, so that you don't just have the business card. But you're not going to remember everyone that very first time. And so it's nice when I will go to a second event and someone and I will be talking, and you'll have that moment where you're like, we've met before. And then it starts coming together, like, oh my gosh, it was last month and it was here. And oh my gosh, we talked about this. So it's always something to work on. But at the same time, if you make those touches and try to keep connecting, then it's easier.
Our business cards are really nice. They have on the, one side they have like our logo, and then they have like our whole mission on there, which is fantastic. And then on the other side, it has our personal contact info. So that's always a handy thing to have. But what other things do you take to networking events, or would you recommend that people kind of keep in their arsenal of things?
Yeah, if you have a event coming up or sponsorship opportunities, I always like to have those in my car. I don't bring them in every time, but if you connect with someone and they're interested in marketing their business in a way, but that your sponsorship has marketing options, then you'd be like, I have something for you in my car. Let me go grab it. Or brochures are great to have, but they're very lengthy. And a lot of the times people leave them at networking events, especially if it's not like a sit down, like lunch and learn or something like that. Breakfasts and lunch and learns are great to bring all sorts of marketing materials to, because you can put them down at all the tables so that people can casually look through them, because that's a more structured, right, quote unquote, networking event. But like a coffee hour where you're just up around walking,
milling around,
after hours, like those are harder to keep track of paper docs. And so I just make sure that I'm always prepared, but I don't have it physically in the building with me. Or I'll have them write on my business card, like, Kalynn will send you XYZ information.
On this or whatever.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Very good. Well, as we're kind of wrapping up our networking discussion here, is there anything you want to leave our listeners with in regards to networking in your position here at Hetra?
You're always going to be nervous to go, right? So if you haven't gone to a networking event yet and you're nervous, just go. Just take that one step and bring someone with you. Say you're going to be there. Give yourself a certain time, right? So if you want to do it for the first time, say you're going to stay for 20 minutes. And for 20 minutes, I'm going to try to talk to 2 people. And that's not as daunting as when an event is an hour and a half long, because a lot of networking events are like an hour and a half. You're not expected to be there that whole hour and a half. And you don't have to be there that whole hour and a half. But take that leap, have some confidence in yourself, give yourself that little pep talk in the mirror, right? Like, I can do this. I'm going to make a new connection today, hopefully a new friend. And that is where most of my friendships as an adult now have come from. So a lot of my adult friends are from networking events, are from young professional groups that I've met along the way. And you never know who you're going to meet if you don't go. And so you never know who you're going to touch. You never know who needs to know about your organization, who is looking for that help or that extra something to fulfill them. And if you don't go, who will?
That's right. Well, it's been delightful. I've learned so much, and I am less scared.
Good.
To go to a networking event after all of this. Well, Kalynn, before I let you go, tell everyone why you keep doing what you do. Why do you keep staying so passionate about your job?
I love my job. I love nonprofits, networking, development. But I think my why is, it's almost like a teacher. And this is like the best way I can explain it. It's that aha moment when you meet someone. So for me, when I am out talking about Hetra and they've heard of you, but they don't know exactly what you do, and you tell them every aspect of the business and organization and how others can get involved and maybe what your reach is, and they have that moment of, oh my gosh, like,
holy cow,
that is so cool, or I didn't know that. And I love it when people are like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know that you also have all these other organizations that you partner with to come to Hetra. It's not just horses around, and that's my biggest why. I want to build community awareness. I want the community to be on the backbone of the nonprofit and wanting to help them in some way. And if that's as little as sharing our stuff on social media or having our contact information on their website, just a way to constantly be involved and keep that conversation alive and that fire, and that people know and understand. And if they understand what you do, then someone will come along and they'll believe in that and they'll want to see that succeed. And that is how I think we've been around for as long as we have.
That's absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
Our community has been so generous and so supportive for us, and it is not without the help of people like you, Miss Kalynn. You've helped us build and develop that, so we appreciate you.
Oh, thank you.
It's obvious how knowledgeable and passionate you are about your job, and if anybody had any questions or anything at all, you can sure reach out to Kalynn, especially through our mentorship program. So if you have any questions about that, run over to heterouniversity.org, and we can sure help you get your questions answered.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me today, Kalynn. I'm sure this won't be the last time we hear from you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode. Until the next one launches, stay connected to our community by joining the Not Just a Pony Ride Facebook group. There, we share exclusive educational content, answer your questions, and review new and exciting developments for the EAS community. Don't forget, if you have suggestions for future episode topics or a lead on a great guest that you think our audience would enjoy, click on the link in the show notes or visit us at heterouniversity.org. This podcast is presented by Hetra University, an educational arm of the Heartland Equine Therapeutic Riding Academy. Hetra University's mission is to provide high-quality educational offerings to our participants and the EAS community. If you'd like to help us work toward our mission, you can make a donation by visiting us online at hetra.org. Again, I can't thank you all enough for helping Hetra change lives one stride at a time.